Olá, pessoal, bem-vindos a mais um Desbravando o Autismo com o Dr. Caio Abujadi, esse programa da Caminho Azul, que já existe há quase 6 meses, né? A gente está trazendo pessoas especialistas em desenvolvimento, especialistas no espectro do autismo, para tentar trazer mais informação para vocês, para tentar fazer com que vocês se sintam conectados com o mundo científico, tentar fazer com que vocês se sintam conectados com o mundo da prática clínica de grandes especialistas. E todos sabem, nós estamos culminando o nosso momento com o grande evento, que é o Congresso Internacional de Autismo, que vai acontecer no final de julho. Nós acabamos agora a última série de desenvolvimento osteomuscular, fizemos a de neuroinflamação, fizemos a de inclusão. Agora nós vamos fazer uma série especial até a época do congresso, onde nós vamos trazer grandes especialistas que estarão falando no congresso, nacionais e internacionais, para que vocês tenham acesso a um pouquinho dessa amostra do que a gente vai ter lá no congresso. E é uma grande alegria, né? É uma grande felicidade a gente ter aqui um grande especialista na área de gestão de mídias sociais. Então, essa live vai ser em inglês, tá? Vocês vão ter um subtitle embaixo, né? Vão ter uma legenda, porque o nosso convidado é de Boston, né? Ele é do Digital Wellness Lab, é o Dr. Michael Rich, e eu vou apresentar ele em inglês também, né? Então, em respeito a ele, nós vamos fazer toda essa live em inglês, e vocês vão ter acesso a ela pela legenda. Tá bom, gente? Aproveitem. Vocês não têm ideia da importância que esse homem tem para o mundo digital, para o mundo da ciência médica, para o mundo da ciência desenvolvimentista. Tá? Ele é o primeiro homem que trouxe assim, a ideia da gestão de uso de mídias de forma correta, de forma adequada. Tem um grande laboratório no Hospital das Crianças de Boston, né? O Boston Children's Hospital, e é professor da Faculdade de Harvard, na área de pediatria, e vocês têm muito que aprender. Então, degustem, aprendam e divulguem, porque essa informação ela não é importante para a Caminho Azul, ela não é importante para o Caio, ela é importante para o Brasil, tá? Que todos vocês possam aproveitar isso o máximo que vocês puderem. E depois, ele vai estar conosco em julho, e vocês podem ver em carne e osso, né? Muito bem. So, now we'll start in English, Professor. Thank you very much for being with us, for accepting this invitation, for being in our program, and to be in our Congress.
Yes.
This is Michael Rich.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to meeting new friends and old in Brazil.
Yeah, Michael Rich has already been in Brazil. He has a list of pediatricians, neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists that are involved with his job. He can talk about them. They are important because they are translating his work, so we can have his work in Portuguese. And it's very important because he is bridging the gap between science and working with child and adolescents in wellness in media work. Is that true, Professor?
Absolutely. As a pediatrician who takes care of children and their families, my job really is translating complex science into practical actions that families can take to help their kids grow up healthy, smart, and kind to others.
Yeah. So I will bring some information about his curriculum. That is a vast curriculum, and we will talk about his life and how he get there, and then we can talk about digital wellness, okay?
Okay.
So Dr. Michael Rich is director of the Digital Wellness Lab, is director of Clínica for Interactive Media and Internet Disorders. He works in the division of adolescent and young and adult med in Boston Children's Hospital and is associate professor of pediatrics in Harvard Medical School. I think you are the first pediatrician of the world, and he is an author of this book, this book that talks about this specialty, né? The
I can
mediatrician's
hold it
guide,
up.
né?
There we go.
Yeah. It's a joyful approach to raising healthy, smart, kind kids in a screen-saturated world. And it's very nice. We'll talk about that in our live. So first of all, we are going to talk about Michael Rich and how he's involved in pediatrician, how he's involved in media work. And you were first a cineast. You work with cinema.
Yes,
Yeah?
Yes. I spent what I call my wicked youth in the film industry. I worked mostly as a writer. I was working to be a writer director, and got the amazing opportunity actually to work in Japan, apprenticing to some of their top directors. I did 4 pictures over there, up to Akira Kurosawa's Kagemusha. And so actually, while that was a brilliant experience, it sort of ruined me for the US film industry, because I came back and I was used to working with a great master of the cinema, and everybody was making comic book movies and horror movies. And I was so discouraged that I went back to college to do pre-medicine and medical school and became a pediatrician. And just as I was coming up in my early years of my professional career was when the American Academy of Pediatrics was starting to get concerned about the effects of television at that point on kids' physical, mental, and social health. Were they becoming obese? Were they becoming less good at their academics? Were they learning violence, for example? And so really since the early 90s, I've been doing active work in the media realm in 2 ways. One, really looking at the effects of the media young people use and how they use them. But the other arm of it really has been to use media as a data collection tool, as a way of giving voice to kids. So in the early 90s, I was giving video camcorders to sick kids and asking them to teach me what it's like to live with asthma or diabetes or HIV. And it was, before selfies, right? Before kids were actually portraying themselves online. And we learned a lot because we looked at these illnesses from the inside out. We looked at it really anthropologically. What is the experience like? How does it affect them? How does it affect those around them? And one of the great things about it was, that young people are uniquely disempowered in our world, that is driven by money and politics. They have a handle on neither of those, but we are now in an information society, and they can create that information. They can use these media to give themselves voice. And so I'm very encouraged by what we see coming back from the kids, which is really phenomenal material that adults don't know.
The kids, I think the kids have this very powerful creative mind, because they are in a phase of development that's empowered them to be very creative and learn, and in an amount that adults don't have anymore. And learning that with them this new world of media, because it's a new word for everyone.
Yes,
parents don't know, because they didn't have this experience when they were young. So they are exploring this in a different way that we can never imagine how to do it. And that's what I felt when I saw you the first time in ACAP 21. I felt Michael Rich knows what he's talking about, because I understand about kids. I am young, but I am with them. I am working with them in 20 years, and I always when I saw you talking about this different form of viewing, how kids use media, it had made my heart bright, because of, now I can follow someone who are bridging this new word for us,
Well, it's really important that we not only empower the kids to have voice, but one of the things that I encourage my patients to do is to be bored from time to time. We have to bring back boredom, because in a world where we never allow ourselves to be bored, we get on an elevator or in a bus and we just look at our devices. But boredom is where creativity and imagination and innovation start, not just because it's empty space, but because that space feels a little uncomfortable. And we need to fill it with something. And unfortunately, most of the time we fill it with whatever is on the smartphone at this moment, rather than taking a moment, taking a deep breath, and feeling the world around us. I came out of the hospital a few months back after a really, really hard day, really exhausted, turned toward where my car was parked, and there was a brilliant sunset. And I looked around the busy city street around me, and everyone was staring at their phone. Right. I had this transfer, you know how when you see something beautiful, all that stuff falls away, all the bad stuff falls away. And I got that experience, and then it felt kind of sad that no one else was seeing it.
And I think when you work with Akira Kurosawa, you have learned to see sunsets differently.
Yeah.
And
everything. I've learned to see everything differently, believe me.
Yeah. And I think that made you a structural change in how you see media and how you see the screen and how you see how everything is presented to someone. And then when you started to work with kids and digital wellness, this structural experience that you have before, it was very important to be a fertile terrain, where you can bring this new information and see things differently. But there's some issues about the media use, because there's you can see a sunset on media, and there's some work that I was learning. There was some revision on natures about natural experience and mental health, but they were talking about not only being on nature, but if you are in a working place with a screen that shows a natural place, it interferes in our brain and our in our wellness. How do you see this difference in being on nature, seeing the nature itself, and seeing the nature on media? Because information media are very diverse, and you can see things that violence, and you can see nature.
Sure.
But even when you see nature, do you think it is different?
Absolutely. Because just because of what the way you said it, we see nature on screen. We don't feel it. We're not present in it with all of our senses alert and curious. We are hearing sounds we wouldn't necessarily hear. That doesn't always come through on the screen. We feel the temperature of the air on our body. We feel the rhythm of life in ways that you don't through a screen. In fact, one of the really interesting things I've learned about screens since the pandemic lockdown is, as you might imagine, our clinic for interactive media and internet disorders went to telehealth, to virtual visits overnight, through Zoom. The first interesting thing we discovered is that we had a no-show rate, people who did not show up for their first visits, somewhere between 25 and 30% when we were seeing them in the clinic, because the parents would be frustrated, angry, and say, I'm going to take you to the doctor who's taking your video games away, right? And so the kid said, no way, I'm not going, right? We went virtual, and overnight, our no-show rate dropped to 0 because they feel comfortable in this environment. They feel in control. And from my end, however, I found that I was really, really tired after a day of virtual visits, in part because I'm working so hard to translate that flat screen image and what little sounds I hear into a whole feeling of who this person is, what they're struggling with. As a psychiatrist, you know that we read our bodies. We read the feelings that we have. We detect depression not from words, but from body language and from, you know, the gaze, where they're looking, how they're looking. And so, you know, we have to work really, really hard in this environment to get close to what is a very natural interaction in person. Now you change that from the clinical setting to friends, you know, friends on, you know, texting each other or on FaceTime with each other. And while you can reach many more people more quickly with a smartphone, those are relatively attenuated or weak kind of interactions compared to what happens face to face. So I'm very much looking forward to meeting you face to face instead of just on screen.
Yeah, me too. For me, it was better if the Congress was tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're having a great week.
Anticipation is most of the fun, right?
Yeah. We got to work on it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So we were talking before our live, and there was some issues, interesting issues that my Dr. Rich brought us. Now talking about neurodiverse kids and autism. One of the issues is if there's an age for us to promote some internet approach, some media approach, how we can manage that. But we have children in different maturities, and there is this universe of information, and how can we manage that? And I thought that brilliant because Dr. Rich organized that for us, translating his research. Can you talk about that for us, please?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that we want to protect our children, but we are approaching it in many ways as a binary issue, on or off. Do I have or do I not have? Instead of understanding that it is a complex and nuanced relationship that we all have with screens. So the first thing I would say is, you know, people ask me, when should we teach children digital or media literacy? And my answer is the moment they start using media. That means even the board books, when you're reading to them, you are helping them understand this is a medium that is communicating to them in certain ways. You know, they can look at the pictures, they hear your voice. But when we start watching television with them, we need to help them translate it. We need to help them understand what it is, why someone made it, that it is in fact a made item. It is not the world, the natural world. And as they come up in age, we are able to determine when they need these various powerful tools, when they can handle them with responsibility, and especially use them in ways that respect themselves and others in that environment. So for some kids, it happens at 10. For some kids, it doesn't happen till after 20. So I think the most important thing is for parents to be present in their young people's lives, to be available to them, to teach them how to use it, but also to learn from them what they're doing. So, I first of all, I say to parents, model the behavior that they want to see their kids have with their screens. So it's important not to be staring at your smartphone for emails while telling your kid to turn off a video game. The second one is mentor them. I call these the 3 M's. So the first one is model. The second is to mentor them. And I use the word mentor quite intentionally because unlike teachers or even professors who lecture at you, a mentor learns as much from the mentee as the mentee learns from the mentor. And that gets over the problem that many parents have of feeling that they don't know interactive media or the internet as well as their kids do, so they don't go there. I've had parents tell me that they're much more comfortable with talking about sex with their kids than they are about talking about the internet, because correctly or incorrectly, they think they know something about sex, but they're quite certain they know not enough about the internet. And so one of the things that mentorship does is it makes the parents present in the young person's digital life. What that means is down the road, when they come across something that upsets them, that confuses them, that scares them, it is not something where they instinctually want to hide it from their parents and feel that they've been bad, but to share it with their parents and sort through it, whether it is, racist, or whether it is hate speech of some kind or another, or whether it's pornography. All of these things are available with one click on a smartphone, and we want to be present in our child's digital lives. In fact, we see young people growing up in a single seamless environment of the physical and the digital that they move in and out of quite freely. And so on the basis of that, it is, I believe, impossible to measure screen time anymore, because there are screens in all of our environments. We often have more than one screen open at the same time, but we don't sit down and go to the movies or watch a television program anymore. We are constantly on the move in and out of this environment. So the third M that I think is really important is monitor. And what I mean by that, because immediately both parents and kids go, no, 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 I don't want this, is that the parents are not in their kids' digital space all the time, but they can be. In other words, they can get in the parents can get into the child's Instagram or whatever feed they're on, and the child behaves differently because the parent can be there, not just that they're watching them all the time. And the other thing is they can share experiences online. Look at this great recipe I found for, dinner tonight, or wow, that's a really cool place. Let's go on vacation there. Things of that nature are things that can be shared and not, done hidden away with. One of the problems with the algorithms online is that they try to profile each person individually, separate from each other, so they can narrowly advertise product. And what that does in many ways is isolates us from each other.
So it's all about information, how to get it, how to manage. I think human race are dealing with that all over here. Their 30,000 years of existence. And now we got this huge amount of information in our hands. We always wanted that but we didn't know which problems we will have with that. So we have to have a new technology, and it is interesting that because all families has this intimacy, has his culture, né? And here in Brazil it's very interesting because we have mixed cultures in different houses. Is not everyone equal. There's no equity in Brazil. Everyone has different thoughts, different thinkings.
Right.
So when you get into media, you get in this mixed information place, and what you brought us, it's very important because I think I saw you. I heard you talk about being in the internet is like being out of our house. And the children has to have maturity to get out of his house alone because it's dangerous for him to encounter some information that he can deal with it. So internet is the same. And the family, when the family is together, the parents is together with the children and adolescent in the media. And first of all, these 3 M's get, I think the children has to get used to be with their parents in the media, because in the first time they feel like they are being invaded. Because they think they are being invaded on their intimacy.
Yes. Yeah. And parents need to remember who bought the smartphone, who pays the plan for the plan. They almost feel like, or the kids certainly feel that they're entitled to a smartphone. But one of the things I say to parents is ask them what they want the smartphone for. And if they say, because everyone else has one, that's not using it as a tool. So it'll take a while, but the young person will figure out that you want to hear responsible use of the phone. And you sit down with them and you say, okay, if you're going to get this phone, here's what you're going to use it for. Here's what you're going to encounter and I want you to try to avoid, because it will harm you. It will be enticing, it will be interesting, but ultimately it will harm you. Not only what you do with it, but when you use it and where you use it. So don't have it in the bedroom with you overnight. Don't have it at the dinner table. The dinner with family is the single most protective thing you can do for their mental health as well as their nutrition. To remember that you're a family, that you're working together, and not only be explicit for how they'll use it, how they won't use it, but what they think the consequences should be if they misuse it, because they will. You put guardrails in place and they're going to push against them. And before they have that phone, they will say things like, you should take the phone away for a week or something like that. Once they have the phone, they're not negotiating with you anymore, right? They've got what they want, and they're doing what they want with it. So this is a part of being present. One of the things that is really, really concerning to me is that we have a bad habit culturally, at least in the US, you can tell me if it's different in Brazil, of handing a tablet or a smartphone to a child that's fussing, a very young child that's making noise, and using it as a distraction or a calming effect or a babysitter.
Yes, it's natural here, but it's interesting because you once told us why the children want the media service like phone, tablets, computer, and the huge amount of kids wants that for pleasure, for gaming, or for seeing videos. And do you think there is a different type of uh, using the, how do we call the the media, where the media are presented, like when I use computer, when I use phones, when I use TVs, when I use tablets. Do you think we have different meanings for every technical?
Yes. I think we should, but do not. First of all, the same content is available on the devices, all these devices, but some of these devices are more portable than others. And because we can have them in our pockets or on our wrists, we essentially have potential for 24/7 access to media, right? All day long, every day of the week. And so I think that we do need to take a step back and in our own use to model the right behavior, but also when we introduce these devices to kids, do it very thoughtfully. One of the things that I have said, and maybe you heard me say it, is instead of seeking killer apps, which is everybody wanted a killer app, we should be developing our killer bees. And those are be mindful in our use of these devices, but also in putting them down and being mindful to ourselves and to the world and being aware of what's around us once we have finished the task on this powerful tool. The second is to be balanced. I think the days of screen time limits are long gone. And even in the days of television, they were avoided or evaded on a regular basis. So I really recommend that people schedule non-screen time in their day. Now, we're going to go for a walk now. We're going to eat dinner without distraction of devices, etc. Just so we can lower the hyperstimulation, we can lower the pressure on us. I have a friend and colleague who for 12 years has observed a tech Sabbath, 1 day a week where they turn everything off. She is a filmmaker and a creator online, and feels that turning it all off once a week actually enriches her capabilities and enriches her imagination and lets her chill out, lets her, kind of calm down and live life in the real physical world. So I think that that's very important. But the third killer bee for parents is essential, and that is be present. Be present in their child's life. If we are staring at our phone or our laptop, we're not present for our child. And I think that is something that we really need to be conscious of. I have been known many times to ask my patients, once their parents are out of the room, what could your parents do better? And I would say almost always the first thing out of their mouths is pay more attention to me. Be present with me, essentially. Be with me. Don't be staring at your work. Don't be, off in your head somewhere, but be present with me. Now, mind you, these are kids whose parents are saying, he never talks. She's always sulking. She's, locking herself in her room. And they don't know that the kids really do want to hear from them. They really do want to be with them, even being in silence, right? And some of that gets back to what we spoke about earlier, which is be bored, be bored together.
I was studying some articles on loneliness, and it's very interesting, the neurobiology of loneliness, because this is a huge problem of the nowadays, and probably that's how kids present their loneliness. They told us that they are bored.
Yeah, right. But when a kid tells you they're bored, you should say, congratulations, this is a great opportunity, right?
You gotta revert that.
Absolutely. Have them value it. A little over 100 years ago, there was a patent officer in Switzerland who spent his days stamping meaningless papers, but walked to work beside the river and came back home and in the space of 1 year wrote the 4 pillars of theoretical physics. 4 papers that he did while he was in a patent office. And people said, well, late in his life, someone asked him, how did you do this? Science historians call this the miraculous year. How did you do this in the miraculous year? He said, it's because I was bored. It's because I could travel. My mind could travel through time and space and think about things. And more than a century later, physicists are still trying to disprove parts of those theories, and they can't. They're really rock solid. So very interesting story. Why deny our children the opportunity to be a great writer or painter or naturalist? I mean, there are so many things that can occur when the child is bored.
So being bored or being lonely is not a bad thing. We gotta teach them how to use their technology of being introspective and be more creative in that state of mind.
Yes, I would say that many kids are more lonely because they seek out relationships or communication with relationships they already have through these devices that weaken the contact, weaken those links, right? It's right now, it's not as if you and I were in the same room. This conversation would be very different, just because we would be sitting together, we would be, feeling the vibrations, in the room. And I think kids go because it's easy to go to the phone, because it's a way of avoiding intimacy, avoiding feeling awkward or feeling, over observed, if you will. And then they expect, though, that connection will be as rich and meaningful as in person. So one of the things that I tell my patients is, if you're thinking of getting together with someone, always think about upgrading by one, right? Nobody likes restrictions, but you can upgrade. So if you're thinking of tweeting, text. If you're thinking of texting, call them. Better yet, video call them. But best of all, get together in person. And one of the things that I say to my teenagers is, after all, you can't make out with a smartphone, right?
It's very interesting because we are studying media, we are learning from media, from this huge mind that's micro rich, but we are learning about relationship. No, we are learning about relationship, and I think the media put us in that place. We gotta be better on our relation to be better on digital wellness. Uh, and there's a paradigm. There was a study. It was published on World Psychiatrist about the searcher. I think it is a ability to search, to get information correctly. And this ability will be very important for the next works that will appear, because the world will change and we'll have new professions, and the ability to reach information in the internet, it's very important to learn. And we are not learning that on school. We are not learning that with our parents. How do you think we can teach our kids, our adolescents, and even us, how to be a better searcher?
I think we have to enrich and motivate their curiosity. Children are endlessly curious if we let them be that. The problem is that with the media is that you can pick up a phone and find any fact you want instantaneously. And so there are a subset of people that say, I don't need to learn science or mathematics. I can just ask Google, right? I can Google it. And so I think it's really important for us to recognize the relative value of what we get online, which after all is not necessarily the truth. And that's a part of digital literacy as well, is that there's a lot of information, but there's also a lot of misinformation and disinformation going on in this space. So one of the things we must do actually in our schools, but also in our homes, is that we've had to reverse the tide of how we learn things. You know, back before smartphones and the internet, we at school would learn how to go to the library, research a project, research stuff, and bring it together and put together in a paper that, you know, talks about this. Now we are all bombarded so much with information that actually teachers are needing to teach kids how to filter out not only misinformation or disinformation, but filter out that which is not on topic for whatever they're doing. You know, this is going to get even harder as generative AI, artificial intelligence, enters our world. You know, we already have teachers fact checking kids' papers by running them through an AI detector. And, you know, so they're using it out of suspicion that the young people may be cheating instead of teaching young people to use it as a powerful research tool. Yeah, one of my actually, I think the last chapter in my book is called "The Art of Living: Curiosity and Creativity as Context for Childhood." So I think that, you know,
show us your book again, so
yes.
everyone can.
Okay, yes. And this,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you a fun story. This lovely child of unclear gender, unclear ethnicity, looking up for guidance, is actually a photo mosaic of over 600 selfies of kids.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We put that together. And the funniest thing about it is, when the kids see the book, they're able to find themselves almost instantaneously, right? In the photo mosaic.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's really. I mean, there's some that can't find them, but then they just get frustrated and look more.
So let's talk about mental health a little bit. So there's some issues about the screen time and the using screen at night and imbalance the nucleus, the circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
Because there are some regions linked with the eye, and that the nucleus can be chaotic when hyper excited. And how can we present them to our viewers if there is like a circadian kind of using media? Is that something that you worry about?
Oh, very much so. But it's not just mental health; it's also their physical and social health as well that I'm concerned about. And you know, we all know that we need sleep to remain, you know, mentally healthy. But a couple of things with adolescents that are very important. First of all, they're in the second most rapid physical growth spurt of their life. That includes not just their body changing and growing, but their brain changing and growing in many ways as well. And they are filling it with life experience. So I, first of all, try to help my kids schedule their life so that they get 8 or better yet 9 hours of sleep at night. And this is an interesting fact, but human growth hormone is only secreted at night. Kids only grow at night. Why? Because they're not fighting gravity to get taller. right? And so it's very interesting that they need it for the physical growth, but they also need it for housekeeping as well as consolidating what's going on for them. They need to get to the fourth cycle of deep REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, to move what they learned or experienced today from their short-term memories into their learning centers. And so even if a kid is managing to stay awake in algebra class, they are possibly not remembering what happened yesterday in algebra class, not because of that they were asleep during the class, but because they didn't get enough sleep the night after, which is really interesting. And we all know that when we are sleep deprived, we're unhappy people, and we make everyone around us unhappy too. And so what I say to the kids, once you figured out when you're going to sleep to get the 8 to 9 hours, I want you to turn off all screens an hour before that, because I want your body to start secreting melatonin for you to get drowsy naturally and go to sleep. You can read books on paper, you can listen to music, but don't look at a blue light screen that's going to suppress that melatonin secretion. And leave their devices out of their bedrooms. I say this to parents too, charge them all in the kitchen or somewhere away from everybody with their notifications off, so that you can focus on the task at hand, which is rest. And so I think that it's really essential to getting enough sleep, but it's also really essential to not multitask when we are doing homework or something else. The multitasking idea is actually a fiction. It is not true. The human brain only operates on one train of thought at once. It only thinks one thing at a time. So what we think we're doing multitasking, what we're really doing is rapid switch tasking. Things that, back and forth. Even during this conversation, your dog barked, you had to help the dog, you know what I mean? We jump in and out of experiences like that, almost naturally. But what we realize is that we can't do them all well. And so in many ways, we're skating over the surface of that. I bet your dog wanted to be patted more than just sort of let in or whatever, right? And so we have to be conscious of the fact that anything we do is done better as a single task. If I'm doing homework, I do it as it is done. If I'm listening to music, pay attention to the music and learn from it. If I am, eating dinner, I'm having dinner with my family. So I think this is all very important to do, again, in a mindful way. Why am I doing this? What do I hope to get from it? And when do I put it away and do the next thing?
And talking about autism, there's some work on oxidative stress in autism. Mm-hmm. They really are very stressed by being awake, and they don't have a sleep biology working well. So we gotta treat that. And when you are exposure in some kind of screens, the hyperactivity of your brain and your body can erase this oxidative stress. So I think in their lives, we can manage that with more focus on time using. Maybe we can stop using more than 1 hour after sleep, because they need more time for producing melatonin and other things that we can manage individually. In each case, we have to look what are their needs, because if they're in an infection or allergic, their oxidative stress is higher, so they need more minus stress. And it's very interesting how, even if we have this knowledge in how doing for everyone, we got to look individually.
Yes, absolutely. An interesting finding we've had from CIMAID, from the Clinic on Interactive Media and Internet Disorders, is that we're almost 7 years old now, and we've seen hundreds of patients, and we have yet to see one for whom the problem was the screen use, whether it was gaming, social media, pornography, or information binging. What we are seeing is that there are certain kids who are more susceptible to it, and they fall into an acronym that we call ASAD, ASAD. That is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, social anxiety, autism spectrum disorder, and depression. That in fact, what they are doing is soothing themselves in this environment. They're distracting themselves from all of that activity you thought about, we're talking about. It makes it much easier for them in a more contained environment with clear rules. And the world itself is much more confusing to them. So an interesting thing about that, though, is particularly kids on the autism spectrum are amazingly good at the internet and being able to do things on there, and maybe almost completely incapable outside of that environment in terms of communicating, et cetera. And as we move into very sophisticated artificial intelligence, the AI companies are actually hiring people intentionally on the autism spectrum because they're so good at AI coding. So again, one of the things that I always say is we are all neurodiverse in a sense, right? We all have different strengths.
I agree.
Yes, right. So this business of sort of sectioning off a group of society and saying you're neurodivergent, that's only comes from you're not like me, so I think I'm normal and you're abnormal. Yeah. But the reality is that we're all neurodivergent in one way or another.
When I'm classing,
yeah,
that is the thing. What I try to present to everyone is we are all neurodiverse.
Yeah,
I think we are all getting better, and this information that you brought us, that the internet the media exposure organized their brains. It's very interesting how they do that. So we gotta present that and organize their use so they can get always benefits with media use, and then this new word of works on media. No?
Yeah,
it's a huge place for autistic persons. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's important for us to recognize that this environment is not going to go away. These problems that people say are not going to go away. It's only going to keep progressing. And while there are certainly things that we should be concerned about in this digital ecosystem, this is an opportunity for us to move into a better place. The whole philosophy behind the Digital Wellness Lab is to move beyond research that stays within the academic realm, that is critical of social media or whatever's out there, but instead feeds our findings back to the tech companies and the entertainment companies at the same time as we are their consumers. And the thought is, can we move to a better place by market forces, by parents and teachers and clinicians saying, you know what, maybe X is not the right place for you to be now, or we can actually shift it. And that's what's behind the Inspired Internet Pledge: is can we get on the same side of the table as the tech companies? And my dream which is forming, is that the Digital Wellness Lab will put a pediatrician next to a software engineer, next to a neuroscientist, next to a screenwriter, and they all bring their respective skill sets to bear on this ecosystem that we all share. And how can we make it better? And I firmly believe that the companies can do well while doing good.
I think your dream is coming true, because
it's hard work, though. Yes.
And it's for the well-being of the whole world, So
yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share what we do with you in Brazil.
Thank you very much. We are getting to our end, because if
we could talk forever. We could talk forever.
Yeah. But thank you very much, Dr. Michael Rich. Thank you very much for being with us in a form, in this kind form, and thank you for the human being that you are, because I think here in Brazil we have this philosophical way of being, that we like persons who do better things for the world and for our social approach. So we are very pleased. I am very pleased to have known you, to have known your work, to learn with you, and to have you in our country and in our Congress. And hopefully we're getting a big hug.
Absolutely.
Thank you on present.
Oh, absolutely. And I look forward to being with you in July.
Remembering that Dr. Michael Rich has a huge team. He's not alone.
Right.
And his team is work a lot, and probably they are brilliant as you are.
But I would like it very much if you have specific questions, you and your audience have specific questions, concerns, research you want to find, let me know and I will bring it with me. I'm actually coming back from Prague, Czech Republic, on my way back from that trip to Brazil. So I want, in that meeting, I'm going to be bringing new material to them, but if there are certain areas that you're concerned about or things you want to think about, please let me know. And I'll have a copy of the book for you, Caio.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will put in my special place. And I will read a lot, because there's so many informations for us. And I hope every clinical pediatrician, psychiatrist, neurologist, psychologist, teachers, fathers, mothers, everyone can get this information. It's my mission either to bring your knowledge to Brazil. I think it's my duty at all. So thank you very much. I will talk in Portuguese just to
wrap it up. Absolutely.
After we finish. Ok. Então, gente, nós estivemos aqui com nosso... Agora posso chamar de amigo? I can't call you friend. Né? Michael Rich. Yeah. Então, nós estamos terminando agora, né, a nossa live. Infelizmente, a gente pode ficar mais que uma hora. São regras do Instagram. Convidando a todos para o congresso. A gente tem um link aí para vocês poderem fazer inscrição. Não percam esse congresso. O Dr. Michael Rich vai estar lá com a gente, dentre outros grandes profissionais, grandes pesquisadores, especialistas, para a gente falar sobre o tema de desenvolvimento e o tema do autismo. Não esqueçam de nos dar o suporte, nos ajudar. Caminho Azul precisa muito de vocês. A gente tem o baralho que vocês podem comprar na ReHap. E não esqueçam de participar nas próximas 3 terças-feiras. Gente, me esqueci o que é. Do Escuta Teia. Do Escuta Teia. As próximas terças-feiras, próximas 2 terças-feiras ao meio-dia, né? Diana vai estar apresentando o Escuta Teia para que vocês possam se expor. E o Dr. Michael Rich acabou de prometer para a gente, todos vocês que tiverem qualquer dúvida, que tiverem qualquer problemática para colocar no assunto e até as dúvidas a serem discutidas no Escuta Teia, nós iremos levar para ele e ele gentilmente vai responder para a gente e pode até trazer no congresso, tá bom? Um grande beijo a todos. Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Rich. We are terminating our live now. Thank you very much.
I look forward to it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.